Panpsychism, a name given to views throughout history which place mind or consciousness as a deep and ubiquitous feature of reality. In these lectures, Eddington argued that there is only one plausible candidate for the intrinsic nature of the physical world: consciousness. Like Russell and others before him, Eddington recognized that science gives no description of the intrinsic nature of the physical world. His primary contribution, however, was to argue convincingly to many that consciousness is precisely the required candidate to fill this awkward gap in our knowledge. Eddington put forward an argument for panpsychism which is known today as the intrinsic nature argument. This argument, now recently rediscovered, has seen panpsychism return as a respectable theory, and a view that now enjoys growing support from scientists and philosophers alike. To explain the intrinsic nature argument, we first begin with an account of consciousness. It is sometimes said that the existence of consciousness is the one thing we know for sure about reality. Perhaps the most famous philosophical dictum of all time is that of René Descartes' "I think, therefore I am." Whatever we believe we may know about the outer universe, there is only one feature of reality that is utterly invulnerable to any and all doubt: our consciousness. The world might be very different to what our senses describe. Maybe we are a brain in a vat, or living in some kind of simulation. Maybe we're just dreaming. And yet, for all of the ways we could be mistaken about reality, we can be sure only that consciousness exists. But other than its existence, what else do we know about consciousness? Eddington argued that we know at least one thing concretely about consciousness: that it is an intrinsic nature. In our unmediated access to it, consciousness is a reality that we apprehend directly and without inference. Consciousness exists uniquely to and for itself. We might even go so far as to say that consciousness is the only part of reality that we truly understand, because only in our consciousness do we have access to the intrinsic nature of at least one small part of the universe. But why then believe consciousness could be the intrinsic nature of all reality? As it turns out, consciousness is both the only intrinsic nature we know or can conceive of. Only consciousness exists to and for itself, and it would seem that this same property is required to ground the physical world in reality. Previously, Russell had described our need for an account of the intrinsic qualities of physical events, and yet it would seem that qualities are the exclusive domain of consciousness. Many philosophers, past and present, have argued that a true account of consciousness requires an expansion of our physical picture of nature, and according to the intrinsic nature argument, physics calls for precisely this expansion in order to be complete. For these reasons, Eddington regarded nature's grounding interiority as a perfect candidate for the otherwise mysterious interiority of our minds. Through this approach, mind and matter could be unified, the interaction problems of dualism could be averted, and the elegant economic ontology of monism could be restored. As Eddington concluded, quote, "All through the physical world runs that unknown content, which must surely be the stuff of our consciousness," end quote.